Good morning, Australian Veteran News viewers. This morning, I am absolutely delighted to be welcoming Garry Spencer, a former Army officer and the driving force behind an organisation called Operation Grain Harvest Assist. Garry, big welcome to Australian Veteran News. Look forward to speaking to you today about Operation Grain Harvest Assist.
Thank you, Mark. Delighted to be here and thanks for the opportunity.
Okay, terrific. Well, look, let's just get right into it. What is Operation Grain Harvest Assist? What was the inspiration behind it? And tell us a bit more about what it's all about.
Mark, I was watching Landline and I watch it from time to time on the ABC. And look, I wouldn't have been watching it apart from the lockdown. We're locked down in Victoria, so we're watching a bit more television than we might otherwise be doing. Saw on Landline that we've got from west coast to east coast in Australia this year bumper crops, particularly in the grain industry. First time in many years from right across the country we've got this bumper harvest. But the biggest problem, they said, is that, we've closed our national borders, our international borders, and so the 100,000 backpackers can't get in, plus the Northern Hemisphere professional harvesters can't get to Australia. So the farmers and the country towns, etc., they may lose the advantage of this bumper crop unless we can get some staff for them. In watching the show on Landline, it struck me that, well, I've worked for 23 years in the Armoured Corps, and I know many armoured crewmen. With a bit of training, they do very well driving harvesters, tractors, chaser bins, etc. Pardon me, could solve the problem, or help solve the problem, alleviate the problem anyway, for a lot of farmers.
So have you got a lot of experience yourself on the farm, Garry, or was this just inspired by watching TV one afternoon?
Well, look, I grew up in the city, Mark, but look, when we do a lot of our exercises and training, it's done often in remote areas. So people in the ADF identify strongly with people from the country, with farms. We exercise over their properties in many cases. So a lot of the young soldiers come from soldiers of all ages come from rural areas. So you get to know and get to appreciate and get to understand what happens out there on the farms and how important it is to our nation. They're the foundations for our food industry and a lot of our exports. We export huge quantities of grain.
Okay, so it sounds like a good idea. It's a bit of a win-win all round if you get it off the ground. So what's happened?
Well, look, the first thing I did was phone a few mates and do a bit of a sanity check just to make sure I wasn't losing it. They all thought it was a good idea. So we then connected up with a whole lot of others around the countryside. We've now got state coordinators in every state. We've been working very closely with one of the peak bodies for the grain industry called GPA, Grain Producers Australia. They've been terrific. It's been very much a joint venture with them from the start. Their lady in Western Australia has been key to helping get our Facebook pages set up, and the two Facebook pages, one for the West Coast and South Australia, one for the eastern states. Those two Facebook pages, they're the keys for that sets up the marketplace, if you like, for how the grain producers and the former ADF people get together.
So have we moved from an idea into actual operation now? Is it going? People going through the process?
Well, look, it was early August that the Landline program was on. Within 2 weeks, we launched a national campaign with the two Facebook pages. On those two Facebook pages, we now have had over 2,000 hits. So we've had a lot of traffic going through there. There's been a lot of match-ups right across the country. The harvest started in mid-October over in Western Australia. About 2 to 4 weeks later in the eastern states, things are moving very briskly. We're seeing a lot of action, a lot of requests out there, and now we're getting requests from retired police and firemen. In South Australia, we're working with the South Australian government. There's an approach to surf life saving there. We're getting a whole lot of non-ADF people wanting to come in, and because our objective is to get the grain harvested, we're being less precious about just having ADF, but it's mostly ADF.
And people are actually entering the program and working out on farms today.
Look, it's happening already. We've already had a retired two-star, working out there in out near Lightning Ridge, and a retired colonel. They've produced a number of YouTube videos which are available, and we've set up a website about a month and a half after launch, We set up a website, and that website has got everything that former ADF people need, everything that people going into the program need. The federal government will provide up to $6,000 reimbursement for costs of getting to and from the farm, and also for outfitting yourself with your boots and your hats and your working clothes and gloves and all those sorts of things. If you're in Victoria, the Victorian government, if once you've been working for a qualifying period, will give you $2,000 just for being there.
Well, it's just a tremendous collaboration from obviously state and federal governments, and I guess the farmers themselves are getting behind it. How do people pick up the training and the skills that they need if they don't necessarily have the confidence that they could drive a header or a tractor or something? How do you sort of broach that with your organisation?
Mark, we've covered it two ways. Grain Producers Australia have a whole suite of online training, and that's available with a hot button through our website. If you're a Victorian, all of the training is available there to you at no cost. We don't suggest you pay for any of the training, but if you're a non-Victorian, there's a whole lot of information and a lot of training there that is free, but the higher level is not free to everybody. When you get to the farm, the farmer is your employer. It's a normal employer-employee relationship. They're accountable for you and your safety. There's safety training online that we've got on our website, but also the farmer should give you training, should give you safety training, give you the full briefing, and teach you how to operate the equipment. So that's the way it works. Some farms own all of their equipment. Other farms have contractors who come in who do the contract harvesting. It varies between areas. So there's a lot of training that's available, so online, but also, so you can do that before you go out there, and a whole lot of training that's available out on the farms.
And so what sort of work can people expect to be able to do?
Well, look, there's general farm work, and harvesting machinery has a lot of working parts, so that all needs to be cleaned and serviced. It's a bit like a combat vehicle. That's why it struck me that there's a lot of similarities. You're probably putting 4 hours work on a tank to 1 hour's worth of operating. It's about the same with harvesters, I would suspect. Everything needs to be cleaned. There's a lot of greasing and oil changing, etc. A lot of dust. That's something in common with combat vehicles. There's a lot of dust produced, and so the air filters need to be cleaned on a regular basis. Keeping it well serviced and well looked after is the key to having it being productive all the time.
And how physically fit and capable do you need to be?
Look, we've got people out there well into their 70s at this stage, and look, when you have a look at the Facebook pages, there's a lot of feedback we're getting from the people who are already out there. Now, this is invariably very positive. They're forming very close relationships with the farmers. The farms are run by families more often than not, some by very big companies, but mostly they're family operations, and they're bonding very well. They're very much appreciating having somebody else out there to help them, and the fact that our guys who've served the nation so very well over such a long period, now serving other parts of the nation, it's really very much an Australian thing. It's mates helping mates. That's what's working very well out there. And people are saying, geez, I want to come back for this next year. This has been terrific. Oh, it's great to get out of Sydney. It's so calm and peaceful out here doing this. And look, another surprise we found is that as people are putting their information into the Facebook pages, other people who know them and have worked with them and served with them in the ADF, who haven't seen them for many years, are contacting them via our Facebook page. So that it's a bit of a reunion thing out there as well.
So it's got a lot of fantastic community elements to it, and I certainly can see the appeal of almost having a little bit of a sabbatical type situation of going out on a farm for a month or so and just enjoying the sunshine and a bit of hard yakka.
Mark, with 2 to 3 months out there, and look, the farms often provide accommodation and meals, so you're getting home cooked meals out there. You don't need to spend much. The award rate's $25 an hour, but many farms are paying well above that. So if you go there for 2 to 3 months, you could just about double your defence pension over a 2 to 3 month period during the harvest.
Yes.
So there's out on the farms, there's permanent, part-time, and full-time work on a general basis, but we're really focusing on the harvest at the moment.
And I suppose people might discover a new lifestyle.
And look, that's what we expect will happen and we think it's a great idea for people who are leaving the ADF to consider going and working on farms, particularly in the grain industry. It's it's very well capitalised. We've got some fabulous machinery out there. Some of the big Harveses are worth well and truly over $1 million. They're air-conditioned cabins, they're computer-driven, they're linked to GPS, they almost drive themselves. And the expertise and the training and the qualities that ADF people have got would be very well and are being very well received out on the farms.
So, have you got any sort of anecdotes or success stories? I think you mentioned a couple of people who are out there living the dream. Are there any others that you could tell us about?
Look, we've got people from all sorts of corps, not just armour, but RAMI and aviation. People doing fabulous work. We've got one gentleman working out on the farms. He was a RAMI craftsman, went off and did officer training, then went back to RAMI a few years later, converted to aviation, started flying outside of the army, then left the army, went and flew all around. I think he's been flying with Saudi Arabian Airlines,
Right.
and he's now working out on the farms, and absolutely having a ball out there. And he'll bring some of his mates along in due course. Uh, Again, they say we had a two-star general, an Armoured Corps general, recently retired general, commanded 37,000 troops in the ADF, and now he's just finished a couple of weeks out on the farms, and he's left behind his mate, a retired Army colonel, and he's continuing work out there. Again, they're having a ball, adding a lot of value, being very much appreciated what they're doing out there.
So, what's your vision for Operation Grain Harvest Assist? You've got it off the ground. It sounds like it's launched very, very successfully. How are you going to hold it together, and what's next?
Look, we've been putting a lot of thought into this, Mark, and what we can and can't do. A lot of collaboration with the grains industry. The grains industry at the moment, they get a lot of professional harvesters in from the Northern Hemisphere. Now, there's no reason that former ADF people couldn't become professional harvesters. We can turn the tables on the Canadians and the others. So if people leave the ADF, they've still got plenty of working years ahead of them. They could qualify. When we'll be putting some training courses together with Case, New Holland, John Deere, those sorts of companies on the harvesters. So you'll learn and become competent on those. You get a higher rate on the farm. You can be harvesting in Australia, then go and harvest in Canada, then go to the prairies of the US and go to Ukraine and harvest over there if you wish. So there's all sorts of opportunities for people to do that. Not only that though, there's the full-time jobs on the farms in Australia. There's no contest that farmers would prefer to have former ADF people than backpackers.
Yep.
A lot less risk, they know what they're getting. It's a bit of a lucky dip with the backpackers. So there's stacks and stacks. So this is a strategic repositioning, or strategic restaffing of the grains industry.
It sounds incredible, and I guess as you mentioned before, apart from the the serendipity of the reunions and things like that, there's a real camaraderie, I suppose, which you get out there, and whether you know the people or not, you've served, you have that connection immediately, and way of working and all that sort of thing.
Mark, it's a bit like the ADF. They're small teams. Farms don't have huge numbers of people. In a small team, everybody's critical. Everybody plays a key role. Everybody's contribution is seen, recognised, and appreciated. And again, that's a bit like the ADF as well. We've had one story in that it's from a New Zealand Defence Force guy who's working out on a farm, and he's saying, the boss is 25, and he's probably in his 60s. He said, the boss is 25 years old. He's the best boss I've ever had. But we've got a 63-year-old Navy guy and a 65-year-old Air Force guy. He's still not sure what to make of us. So the people on the farms are learning as well.
Yeah.
They do in the country very much appreciate people who've had ADF service. So they're getting instant respect and appreciation, and they're all working together as a collaborative team to bring in the harvest. So this is the end of a years-long cycle in some cases for the farms. They want to get it right. They're always trying to get it right with the weather. We've just had a lot of bad weather go across New South Wales, and in central New South Wales it's wiped about $100 million, they estimate, off the grain harvest. So right at the end, right at the 11th hour, they can lose so much. if they get the timing wrong. So everybody's playing a critical role.
Yeah, and I guess depending on your motivation, you could really make something of it. As you mentioned, you're talking about some very, sophisticated and super expensive machinery in some cases, and that sort of thing. And I'm guessing the teamwork and the management skills that a lot of these people would bring would be in great demand, I guess, out in the bush.
But what we're coming up with, what we're proposing, and we're still not quite got it all fully defined, is what we're calling a REV program, Rural Employment for Veterans.
Mm-hmm.
So when people in the ADF are transitioning out of the ADF, we'll be working hopefully closely with the ADF and DVA and with the grain producers around Australia to get in front of people to talk about rural employment, but particularly grains industry employment. There's a lot of jobs. There's 1,000 jobs. Before we started, there were 1,000 jobs just in harvesting in Western Australia, and 5,000 jobs available in grain handling to get the grain from the farms to the ships.
Yep.
It's got to be on the ships. When those ships arrive, they can't hang about. They've got to be filled. You've got to get that grain to the market. You're a price maker rather than a price taker.
Yeah.
So you want to get the best price for your grain, and we do have a very good product in Australia if we get a good season. So that's 6,000 jobs in the grains industry just in Western Australia.
Yeah.
There are thousands of jobs across the country, and people are crying out for the quality of people that we have, very well selected, very well trained, very well organised. They stay and see the job through till it's completed. These people are trustworthy. They work unsupervised. They're the sort of people they want out there who become key members of their farm, their team, their community, their local town.
It really does sound like an incredibly strategic initiative that's come out of probably a lazy Sunday afternoon watching Landline.
Look, we've had a very good team, and the relationship we've already got with the grains industry, which can only expand in my view, has been terrific. And this is not quite a national emergency, but it's almost a national emergency.
Speaking of emergencies, I'm probably getting more to the personal nature of things, and acknowledging that we're both not psychologists. Well, I don't think you are. I'm not. The question I want to ask you about is, and we've recently done a national veterans health and wellbeing survey, and employment usually comes up in our surveys. So we've run a couple now, and we've done some other surveys in the past. Employment seems to come up as a thing that about roughly half of the veterans that we survey say that they've struggled with during their transition or after their transition. But also in the comments on various other dimensions of wellbeing, people mention employment as almost a bit of a root cause for things. So obviously financial, housing, etc. How important do you think opportunities like this are for veterans, and what else should we be doing to perhaps improving that transition into meaningful and I guess suitable employment for veterans?
Mark, I left Defence after 23 years, and I'd been preparing for leaving Defence for some years before that, in my own time, without any assistance from anybody else. And it wasn't part of a pre-planned Defence program, it was my own program. So preparing is very important. Putting in a bit of thought is very important in what you'd like to do, where you'd like to live, what sort of lifestyle you'd like to have. And our role in transition, as I see it, it's not just talking to people, it's having the courses ready, engaged with Case or New Holland or John Deere, etc. So people do the course. To have other relationships with universities, people might want to do an agricultural degree.
Yeah.
Or they might want to do a vocational course at a TAFE.
So there's some pathways there that you can see that could actually fit into a bigger program. So people preparing some years ahead, but also there's the situation where people don't get to prepare. They have an injury or they suffer an illness or something like that. And so there's sort of, the transition is almost thrust upon them, and sometimes they don't even, never wanted to leave the military or ever contemplated it. So that sort of having a support network that's ready to go would be quite important, I would think.
And look, we've got state coordinators at the moment, but we see a need for regional coordinators to assist them to work very closely with the farms, to define with the farms through the grain producers what their specific requirements are, what they're looking for, when they're looking for them, how many people they're looking for, to check the farms out. Look, already we've found one farm. We've had a very well qualified Ramey guy went out to work on a farm. He left within a day or so. The farm was an absolute mess. The accommodation they provided was filthy. There was no pride there. It was a company-owned organisation
Right.
where nobody ever took ownership for it. It's like anything where nobody takes ownership. So
Yeah.
he left in disgust. Now, we'll never go back to that farm. And that's the role of our state coordinators, to do the issues management, to
Yeah.
make sure our ADF people aren't being ripped off by the farms. Farmers don't like spending too much money when they don't have to. That's
Mm.
why they're
Mm.
successful. One of the reasons they're successful. But we want to make sure that our people are well looked after, so their welfare, making sure they aren't taken advantage of. This is not a charity we're talking about. These people are getting paid for the work they're doing, and we expect them to be respected, looked after, and appreciated. And that's why we've got our coordinators there to resolve those issues. So there's only one farm with 2,000 hits on the Facebook pages. There's only one farm where people have been there where we've got awful reports, or an awful report, but we've had so many glowing reports, and the relationships and the welcomes have been exceeded everybody's
In a
expectations.
lot of ways, this situation will be self-regulating within a quite highly trusted network. The coordinators, are they veterans as well?
Well, look, the coordinator in Brisbane is Danny Brooks, a very respected former RSM from the Armoured Corps, also my troop sergeant at 2 Troop B Squadron 4 Cav all those
Okay.
years ago. An outstanding individual. In Victoria, we've got Werner Goller, again a very respected Warrant Officer Class 1 from the Armoured Corps. Worked in Headquarters Training Command in a senior co-ord role. An absolutely outstanding individual. In South Australia, we've got a gentleman by the name of Peter Newhouse. Peter was a Black Hawk pilot, commanded the aviation squadron, I think in Townsville at one stage. He's done a whole lot of other jobs. Has worked at Duntroon, and he's doing a fabulous job there, breaking a lot of new ground, a lot of original thought. He's the one working with the Surf Lifesaving Organisation, and we expect that might become national if it works well in South Australia. We'll try and make that a national contact, particularly for harvest time. And in Western Australia, we've got Kevin McCarthy, an outstanding individual, commanded the APC squadron in Townsville, deployed overseas with the UN. We were colleagues in regiments together, both founding members of the 2nd Cavalry Regiment. Again, an outstanding individual in any way, shape or form. So they're all doing great work,
Yeah.
and very much appreciate their contribution. We've got a guy in Brisbane called Max Vardaniger, Transport Corps classmate, and just a lovely fellow, and he's doing a lot of our marketing work. So we've got a great team, and say the relationship with Grain Producers Australia has been very productive and very worthwhile, and we're enjoying working with them.
Well, that sounds terrific, Gary. And I think you've sold me. How do I get involved? What would you advise people to do to sign up, get into the program, to find out what opportunities might be there for them?
Mark, we've got the website, which is our key portal, if you like, for getting involved in the program, for registering your information. So at the bottom of the home page, there's a place for farmers to register, and there's a place for former ADF people to register. And we need you to register, so we've got the contact details, and so we can assist wherever possible. If we can't contact you, and it's a bit clumsy through Facebook to do this sort of thing. So we need to have those contact details and know where you are and have your contact details. So www.opgha.org.au. The OPGHA, Operation Grain Harvest
Yeah.
Assist.org.au. If people go there, there's stacks of information. There's a whole lot of, there's an end-to-end process. There's online training. There's access to the Ag Move, the federal government $6,000 program. Information on all the other aspects. There's a number of media bits of video, etc., that marketing video, and we've had a an article in the Australian. So we're getting some pretty good promotion out there.
And if you need to talk to somebody about it, will someone contact you if you put your details in? Is that the process, or do you need to make a call?
And the contact details in every state for the coordinators is on the website as well.
All right. So and
we continue to update the website as we go along.
So it sounds like the coordinators and yourself. This is a volunteer effort, so people should be a little bit patient, I suppose. But if they want to be proactive, they should get on the phone and try to drive it along a little bit, I suppose. But it sounds like a terrific program, Garry, and I want to congratulate you for what you've achieved so far.
Well, it's amazing the things that can happen when you're locked up at home and you can't do anything, can't go anywhere, and you can do a bit of thinking though. That doesn't stop you thinking. But we're certainly very pleased that this is coming to an end. All the lockdowns, particularly in Victoria, we're over it.
Well, that's a tremendous initiative, Garry. Once again, thank you for joining us in Australian Veteran News, and I think you've used your network and your contacts and your skills very well to get this moving, and we'll watch this very closely. We're going to provide some information on our website about how to get in touch with you, but it's pretty straightforward, and we'll include that information on this video as well. So thanks very much, and I'm looking forward to speaking to you again and seeing what else has happened maybe after a few months.
Mark, I'll be very interested to hear what I've got to say to you. I hope it works. It's working well so far. We really appreciate having Australian Veteran News on board, and you guys and the other defence regimental and corps websites, etc. They've been vital, absolutely vital in getting the word out and getting so many people coming forward.
Well, we'll do our best. Thanks, Garry.
Thank you, mate.